And, I love people, so as many times as I could, I'd be out trying to meet people. But there'll be times where I would crawl up into a ball in my little room that no one could see, and I would just be in absolute pain. And then I'd hear the worship of the next service start, and I would pray, and I would grit my teeth, and I'd get back out there, and I'd lead again, And
one of the little techniques I try to do sometimes on a Sunday when I'm about to go preach to the crowd is I try to find a guy in the crowd or talk to someone before and go, cool, whatever I'm about to go up there and say, let me say it to him. Let me say it to her.
Yeah, beautiful.
And try to picture that person going, is this helpful? Am I adding value here? And
literally that night later, you said to me, like, why didn't you say anything? Like, there was 200 people there, and 15 people said something. You're like, Ben, why didn't you say something?
Bro, this might be the sign of a narcissist. Hey, at the birthday party with 200 people and everyone honored me, I noticed that you never said anything.
Yeah.
Now that we're here in private, do you have anything to say?
I want other pastors to know that, man, you may have some dark days and you may have some tough times and you want to throw in the towel sometimes, but like what we do is worth it,
Hey, it's Rich, and you're listening to the Mature Me podcast, weekly content devoted to all things life, leadership, culture, and faith. Thank you for taking some time to tune in. Make sure you subscribe and follow us on all our social channels so you don't miss a thing. Let's listen to today's episode.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to a brand new episode of the Mature Me podcast. My name is Rich Wilkerson Jr., and I am so glad that you're taking time to join us today. If you're listening by way of Spotify or Apple, thank you so much for listening. Go ahead right now and leave us a review. Rate this. It really helps a whole lot. If you're watching on YouTube, what up, YouTube family? Like, subscribe, share this content, leave a comment. All of these things help tremendously. But this is the podcast that we talk all things growth. We want to grow mentally, spiritually, emotionally, even physically. And maturing is a journey, and life is a journey. And one of the ways that I want to help you on your journey of life and journey of leadership is we release every Tuesday morning a Leadership with Rich email. It's free of charge. Close to 10,000 people get that email every Tuesday morning. Go ahead right now and go to richwilkersonjr.com and you can sign up to get that email. It shows up right in your inbox, I believe 6 a.m., hot off the press. Great leadership handles to help you in your leadership. As you get better, well, everyone around you gets better. Today, we are joined by an incredible guest. I think we've always got fantastic people on the pod, and today I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Ben Houston is here. He's been my friend for well over a decade. He is a father, husband, leader, pastor, writer, actor. Rich, I've never been an actor. We had an actor on the other day. I'm like, actor, artist. But Ben is an incredible, incredible friend of mine, and I'm so thankful that we've got you on the pod today. Ladies and gentlemen, from around the world, please welcome to the Mature Me podcast, Ben Houston. And then we put the clap hands in.
Thank you, Rich.
How are you, man of God?
I'm doing good. I'm happier to see you. That introduction was amazing.
Was that okay?
That was fantastic.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of things we could say about you. I do think the older I get, I just find myself addressing people as, how you doing, man of God? It's like, Rich, I'm older than you, okay? Remember I went to, was it your 30th birthday I went to?
Yeah, New York
Wow.
City. New York City.
How old are you now?
I am 42.
So 12 years ago was at your birthday.
Yeah.
What do you remember
met
at that birthday
a few
party?
years before that
We
in
did.
Melbourne, I think.
We met in Melbourne, Australia.
We did.
Do you think Sydney's better or Melbourne's better?
100% Sydney.
For sure.
No doubt.
Do you think Sydney's L.A. and Melbourne's New York, or that's not a fair comparison?
Sure.
Kind of, or not really? Maybe Sydney's L.A., but Melbourne's definitely not New York. Do you know what I mean by that? Like,
I mean,
that's
it's such an American question. I would
Totally.
say Sydney is Sydney and Melbourne is
nation
Melbourne.
in the world. Yeah, sorry. You're so ethnocentric. Look up that word. You'll find out what that means. But you think Sydney's way better than Melbourne?
Nah, they're different.
Yeah, they are.
I live in America now, so
Yeah, I hear you.
yeah, long way removed from
Just
both
trying
of
to
them.
get you to Miami. Let's go back to the day we met. We met in Melbourne
Yeah, Planet Shakers conference.
maybe 14 years ago, you
I
think?
wouldn't have a clue.
Maybe 2
Long
years
time.
before you-
Whatever
probably
it was, we were children.
We were kids. We were at Planet Shakers conference. Shout out to Planet Shakers. Russell Evans, Pastor Sam.
Yeah.
And we were at that conference, and then maybe we went out afterwards that night. I think you and I found
I think
some
you
little-
walked up, we talked, we said, let's hang out. And we went out that night and pretty much just stayed up chatting for hours and hours. And
we
was
connected,
awesome.
right?
We did.
We became brothers. I remember your 30th birthday was amazing.
Yeah, it was fun.
That was in New York City.
It was.
What can you share that you remember from the 30th birthday? The image I have is, did we go to Catch?
Yes,
Like
we
Catch
did.
Steakhouse?
Yeah. I think Joel or someone got that chef's table.
Yeah. Somebody got us a cool table.
Why are we talking about my 30th?
Because that's right now as I'm
Yeah.
seeing you, I remember your 30th birthday in New York City.
We hung out. There was a good group of people. We went to that restaurant. We hung out. It was fun.
Did we honor you that night? Like, did we say
Like
words?
prophetically,
I
or
don't know. Yeah, did we prophesy or affirm, or did you feel celebrated?
I did.
Man, that was a powerful birthday. Like doing that. No, it's funny to me because right when we're talking, I'm like, wait a minute, we did your 30th birthday, so I've known you for a very, very long time.
I came to your 30th too.
Yes.
And I think you were upset at me because, I didn't know how you guys roll, but toward the end, everyone gets up and was doing these encouragements and everything. And
yes. Well,
I was
affirmed.
like-
That's what I was
I'm
saying.
like
Did we
shy,
honor you? You guys honored me at my 30th.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. Like, I'm not the guy that asserts myself all the time. I kind of sit back. And so, different people got up and they're saying nice things about you. And I didn't. Not that I don't love you.
Why did you not do that?
I'm not the person that,
Yeah.
I'm not the loud person.
That hurt me that night.
I'm not the loud person in any setting, But you literally that night later, you said to me, like, why didn't you say anything? Like there was 200 people there, and 15 people said something. But you're like, Ben, why didn't you say
Bro,
something?
this might be the sign of a narcissist. Hey, at the birthday party with 200 people and everyone honored me, I noticed that you never said anything.
Yeah.
Now that we're here in private, do you have anything to say?
Well, actually, I've been dwelling on this now.
Okay, yeah, go for it now. Go for it now.
Pastor
Go back to my 30th
you
birthday.
You are an incredible human being. I love you dearly. You've been such a good influence in my life.
Influence.
And, what you are doing, pastoring, leading, inspiring the nations, the world, it's just amazing. It's an honor to know you. And happy 30th birthday, Rich.
Thank you, man. One of the things that Ben and I have done is as we've gone back in our life, we find the areas of trauma and we go back and we reenact and rehearse what we wish we could have done.
Yeah.
And that honor right there
Yeah.
finally brings healing to my heart.
Amen.
And I
I'm
appreciate
glad.
you so
I'm glad.
much. And, I want to take you back to little Ben when you're 4 years old. No, I'm kidding. Like we start doing that.
There's a time you came into L.A. and you texted me, you were like, we should hang out. And then we didn't hang out.
Yeah.
And I waited. And
that broke your heart.
yeah, you hung out with other people.
Oh,
And
my God.
if we're going to go back to trauma, I'd just like you to speak into that moment and just bring some healing.
What year was this?
1995. No, I don't know.
I'm so sorry if I did that.
Yeah.
I text a lot of people often, and last night I had dinner with some pastors, and I had texted them the week before because they were in town, and I didn't know they were in town, and I was like, bro, what do you guys? Wow, you were in church. That's amazing. And they're like, yeah, and they're kind of going through a transition, and they're like, we're going to be here next week. We're going to come to church again. I was like, oh, well, come to the house. Come over to the house. Well, I kind of just sometimes say that,
Yes.
And 6 days later, it's like, hey, so what's the house address? We're coming over. I'm like, oh my God, I invited you to my house and I haven't checked with my wife or my schedule. Oh, I'm in Orlando, but I'll be back in time for dinner. And so, look, friends, we're all still maturing and still growing. I throw a big net out there,
Yeah.
My God, I'm sorry if I did that, but we'll find healing in it.
I was somewhat joking.
It is.
Somewhat.
Yeah, somewhat, yeah. We're going to get to some healing here today.
Yeah.
No, I think it's super cool. It is funny just looking back and reminiscing that, honestly, I can't believe I was at your 30th. I can't believe I forgot you were at my 30th birthday. Just celebrated my 40th. So we have well over a decade of friendship, and there's been a lot of life already lived.
Yeah. Have
you heard that quote? Most people overestimate what they can do in 1 year, but they underestimate what they can do in 10 years.
Yeah.
I think it's Kierkegaard who says something like, you can only understand life by looking backwards, but life must be lived forwards. All of that stuff kind of just speaks to the idea of just like time. And so much happens over the course of time.
Yeah.
And when I look back, I can learn. I think the insight of hindsight is that I can probably grab some foresight. Like, I'm rhyming. But I can actually try to begin to navigate where it is that I am going. And I just, as we look back and reflect, man, God's done so much. And there have been really, really high highs, but there's also been some low lows. And I just thought today, we'd have a little bit of a conversation around just some of your stories, some of the things that you've gone through. Some of the things you're up to right now are really, really cool, and I'm excited about it. But for those that don't know, you grew up in Hillsong Church. You pastored at Hillsong Church, Hillsong L.A. I want to kind of hear some of that story. And so maybe we can go back to the beginning, just talk a little bit about growing up, where you grew up, and maybe even just take us to how you got into the ministry in the beginning.
Yeah, totally. Well, my parents are Brian and Bobby Houston. They planted, at the time, Hills Christian Life Center, 1983. I was born in 1982, so I was one when they planted the church. It was something like 45, 47 people or something like that in a school hall. And my entire life, I grew up in that church.
Yeah.
All my childhood, my teenage years. When I finished high school, I spent a year worked on a roof, landscaping, worked in a clothing store. That's where I met Lucille.
Talk about the clothing store.
General Pants.
How do I know that about your store?
Because you're still wearing General Pants stuff.
Yeah, this is all General Pants. Shout out General Pants. We need a sponsorship. Sorry. You met Lucille at General Pants, though?
Yeah, well, we met at our youth on a Friday night.
Okay. Wildlife.
And a friend of mine, Scotty Lidgetwood, walked up to me. I was a leader. Lucille was a student. I was 18. She was 16. He comes, Ben, I need you, and so I was like, all right, we're going to pray for a kid, cast out a demon, something, like a youth leader.
Stuff. Yeah, totally.
Mature in my ministry at that age. And he's like, come check out this girl. Anyway, it was Lucille. So we met, and then that Monday, so that was a Friday night. On the Monday, I was at work. I get a call from a different store. Hi, this is Lucille. Just wondering if you have these jeans in stock. And I was like, Lucille, were you at Wildlife on Friday night? She goes, yeah. I go, this is Ben, So I spoke to my manager after that and said, hey, there's this girl, Lucille. She works at a different store. Next time I'm on, do you want to see if she could fill in a spot? And so he loved me. So he did it. And so we started, working together at General Pants and rest is history. But anyway.
I love it.
I was, there was like all these different things that I wanted to do. I ended up doing our Hillsong Bible College a long time ago. So that would have been 2001, 2002. And then I spent a year overseas, lived in Kiev in the Ukraine. I lived in London, and then I lived in Virginia Beach, and just spent that time really growing, maturing, kind of, I'd always grown up as the pastor's kid, and I spent a year just growing.
What years was that?
That was 2003.
So
you spent a year overseas.
And how old would you have been then?
Like 21.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was that scary to do?
It was spontaneous. I think there's been so many areas of my life, still to this day, that just spontaneous. I've never been the guy that calculates everything out and goes and executes that. I've always lived with an open heart, open mind, open hands, and just tried to be obedient to whatever God has for me in that season. And that whole idea came up, and it was like a matter of weeks, maybe a couple of months later, I just went.
Wow.
Went to Kiev first, spoke no Russian, and at that time, 2003, it was probably even very different to now, even in terms of what the internet and so on has done to bring, make the world smaller, and so to speak. So I learned Russian. The last night that I was there, I'm on one of the main streets in Kiev. I end up talking to this guy. He's blind drunk. He actually comes up to me trying to fight me. I end up in this big conversation with him, talk to him about why I'm there, that I've been, serving in this church, doing this stuff with orphanages and all of this. Find out that he used to go to church, so far away from God, end up praying with him. That entire conversation was in Russian. How weird is that? But I can't remember anything now.
How did you do that?
The Holy Spirit.
By the way, that story is a snapshot of who Ben Houston is right there. Guy comes up to fight you. Somehow you end up winning him over. Yeah. You're crying and praying with him, all in the streets
I didn't say
of
crying,
Kiev. Well, he probably was.
Yeah. I do cry a lot.
Yeah, we all do.
Yeah, but anyway, when I came back from that, so that was 2003. When I came back from that, I moved to our city campus. We'd just kind of gone hills and city at that time, and Was involved in the youth ministry.
At this time, Hillsong only has in Australia just those 2 locations?
Yeah, I think it was 1999 that it became Hillsong Church and the 2 locations, Hills and City. There was a church in Kiev, there was a church in London. At that point, we'd like kind of planted churches in different places. But yeah, I would say that time as a youth pastor in the city is when my heart for people, the brokenness and you know, just what people go through really broke. We were right on the edge of an area. It was like an indigenous area. A lot of it was a difficult environment.
You saw pain up close.
Very close. And I put myself there. My heart breaks for people. You know me. You know what I'm like. You know what drives me. And I would see these young kids and some of the abuse that they were facing, the violence. You know, I remember seeing a bunch of guys beating up a girl and just running in there and breaking that up. And I 2 different times, people overdosing. One guy stopped breathing in my arms. You know, tracks all up his arms. And it's actually a crazy story. I don't really talk about this stuff much, but it was a Friday night. We had youth that night. I'm sitting there having dinner, doi tao, Thai, greatest food ever.
Let's go.
We're sitting there with some of the leaders, and this guy's walking along, 2 guys. We just see him collapse. His feet are still up on the curb. He's lying out in the street. So I run out there. I kind of pick him, move him off the street a little bit, and he's still holding a spoon. You could see his arms, and you know, he's full on overdosing. I call 000, which if you're an American in Australia, don't call 911. Call 000.
Didn't know.
There you go.
Now we know.
But I called and basically this guy's not breathing in my arms, and I actually I didn't know what to do. I started praying. I looked at him and I shouted Jesus in his face, and he opened his eyes and held him until the ambulance came and took him and everything. But you know, just being in that environment, being in that that place, my heart just broke for humanity, for people. And it was a really, really great, significant time in my life and Lucille's life. And we went from there, planted a church, a location in the northern beaches of Sydney, 12 people in a living room, and kind of built that thing up to a couple of hundred people. And it was great times. We met in a golf course, and so I would sit there preaching, and you'd look out these big...
A little bit of a contrast from the city to
I know.
the golf course.
My life is full of contrast. That's all it is.
Well, I think that one of the things that you are highlighting, that what I can say about Ben confidently, and I think we should talk a little bit about it, which is your heart for people. And I think that you lead with a deep, deep sense of empathy, which results in a humility. I don't think humility is like, hey, I'm humble. I think humility is more marked by, I'm just not thinking about myself. I'm thinking about other people. Yeah. And I've seen that so much in your life. One of the most, impactful moments I've had in ministry, this is maybe a bold statement, but I think it's true. 2018, I'm speaking at HTB conference. Well, it's not HTB conference. It's called the Leadership Conference. You know what I'm talking about with Nikki Gumbel?
Yeah, in London.
Yeah, at Royal Albert Hall. And that year, their theme is on reconciliation. And I think they really lean into their themes. Like, all the different speakers are people from all over the globe that have crazy forgiveness stories and restoration stories. Well, the keynote there that year was Brian Stevens, who wrote Just Mercy. I'm not sure if you're familiar with his work or his book. They made it a movie. Michael B. Jordan plays him. Okay. And I hadn't at the time ever heard of Brian Stevens. And so he's on that afternoon. I'm speaking that night. And like, what am I speaking on? Like, Joseph, like it's like I'm finding the Bible story.
Everything.
Well, yeah, it's like all I got is Joseph's story. Well, Brian Stevens has done work in the social justice area of people that have been wrongfully accused, and he has given his life to helping men and women that are on death row that have been wrongfully accused get lighter sentences or be acquitted. And so it's really, really humble work, merciful work, and he gives this keynote, man, that. I mean, I just remember the talk so vividly. I mean, it was so moving. He finishes the talk, and I think it was a 5-minute standing ovation in Albert Hall.
Wow. Some
dude behind me who I don't even know was like, hey, what are you going to say tonight? I'm like, bro, I swear to. who are you? Get thee behind me, Satan. I don't know, but can I just have my own moment before I have to go into comparison and competition? For goodness sake, aren't we amongst the get out of here. But then I was like, what am I going to say? But we're weeping, we're crying. That's a long way to say one thing that he said in that talk that I'll never forget. He said it's so important for people of means or people of any form of privilege, people of any form of resource, that as your life grows, you get more and more distant from the pain. And there's something about proximity to pain that when you get close to pain, here it goes, you're going to see things that you never would see. You're going to hear things that you normally would never hear. And you will feel things that you normally would never feel. And what I took from that was that as God has blessed us, and I'm so grateful for the things that God's done in our life, that if we're not careful, we will kind of omit all the pain from our life, and we'll just get into our own little comfort zone, our own little bubble. And as we do that, we are getting further and further away from the heart of God.
Wow.
God's close to the brokenhearted.
Yeah,
and I got to make sure at 40 years of age that I still put myself into the place to hear things that I wouldn't normally hear, see things and feel things. I think in many ways you're telling me that story. It seems like God put you in a moment that you were seeing stuff that you had never seen before, but what it was doing was breaking your heart and giving you the heart of God. Just talk a little bit about that as in those years, I guess 22, 23, that God's breaking your heart for people. It feels like that's been a core value of your life.
Yeah, it is. And I don't exactly know why that is, you know. I don't know how I would encourage or help others do that. It's just, I don't know. It's just, I feel like the way that God created me. I've always loved church. I love ministry. I love the local church. And, you know, this has been tested this past few years.
Sure.
But I've always loved the beauty of the gospel. I think we live in a world and we live at a time, you know, all this social media, this stuff, all this stuff that exists. I feel like the volume is turned up so loud in so many parts of society and the world. There's positives to that. There's negatives to that. And in that, there's so much criticism and thoughts to the local church and mega church and the model of church. And, you know, there's all of this stuff. But if we can see through or kind of wade through all of that stuff and get to the beauty of the gospel, the fact that every single one of us, every single person on this planet, no matter where you came from, no matter what your past was like, every single one of us are broken and lost without Jesus Christ. And yet when you look at the beauty and the message of Jesus Christ, the good news of the gospel, and what that means, like that compels and drives me in every way. And so as I started, you know, growing up in Hillsong Church, and as it started to grow and spread and increase, and there was all these different aspects to it, I would always come back to the individual. I would always come, not the crowds, but just the one, and think about the beauty of the gospel for that one person. You know, most people do live their lives so focused on themselves. We have our own perspectives, our own worldviews that have been shaped from the moment we've been born. And we're selfish, you know? Like we live our lives according to our own perspective and everything. And it's not too often people really, we might do this to a point, but like really slow down to think about other people.
Yeah.
I don't know, since I was young and growing up in the church and the example of my parents and just the heart of God, like I always wanted to slow down to think about
it's beautiful.
That individual, that person. And then as you start doing that, you start to see a little bit deeper. You start to maybe process a little bit deeper. You start to think about the different journeys, pains, experiences that people might be going through. And I can't explain exactly why, but my heart would go toward that. and therefore it would start to dictate my decisions and the way that I want to live, you know?
I think it's really, really powerful what you're saying, because I actually think that is a practical handle. I think we have to all seek God and we have to get God's heart. But even what you just said, like for all the preachers out there, for all the leaders, like one of the little techniques I try to do sometimes on a Sunday when I'm about to go preach to the crowd is I try to find a guy in the crowd or talk to someone before and go, cool, whatever I'm about to go up there and say, let me say it to him. Let me say it to her. And try to picture that person going, is this helpful? Am I adding value here? And I think when you say, get your eyes off the crowd and get your eyes onto the individual, that to me is so wise and so important. There's this really cool documentary on Netflix right now that I just watched last night. It's about the Apollo 13 journey. Those of you who don't remember the Apollo 13 journey, 3 astronauts go up. They're trying to land on the moon, but they have a massive crash up in the air. And all of a sudden, the entire mission is no longer going to the moon. It's just trying to get these guys back. And they have a 10% chance of making it back to Earth. It's miracle after miracle. It's also innovation and team effort. There's a whole lot there. But I was watching the documentary, and it's really cool how they did it because it's all original footage that NASA's never released, and they, I guess, redoctor it or clean it up. And it's all audio from the people then, like from different interviews that they've patched together and tell this story. And one of the astronauts is telling this story about being up there in space. And as you look down upon the Earth, you can hold your thumb up.
Crazy.
And the entire Earth is covered with just your thumb. And he said, what a thought that everything I care about, everything that means something to me, every person is down there on that tiny little planet. And he said, when I see it from this perspective, it becomes almost laughable that people have such a hard time getting along. And when I read passages like, for God so loved the world that he gave his only son, there's the individual, that whosoever, there's the individual, would believe, would not perish but have everlasting life. It starts to put things into perspective. It's like sometimes we need to zoom out so then we can also even kind of zoom in. Like, what an idea that, like, why can't we get along? It's so tiny. Like, what are you guys fighting about? Like, I can't even, definitely can't hear the argument down here. And I think for all of us that are trying to be like Jesus, trying to go on the journey of building his church or even just establishing his kingdom, we do that in the marketplace. We do that, not just pastors and leaders listening to this, but it's so important that we get his heart, and his heart is people. And I've just watched you. I think that I've just watched people gravitate towards you throughout the years. I think people end up telling you things they don't tell other people because you're trustworthy and that you lead with love and you lead with empathy. And I think it's a gift that God's given you, but I think it's also something that you've stewarded. And I think there's lots of things that we can learn from you as we talk about that. But as we kind of continue even in your journey, you go out to the northern beaches. You're pastoring out there. Eventually, I think if I remember, you're kind of leading all of the different locations. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, I think starting that one in the northern beaches, I think is what really put that church planning thing inside of me. I enjoyed that process of kind of going from nothing and creating something. I did that for a couple of years and then got asked to oversee 18 different locations across, at that time, 2 different states in Australia.
It's a pretty easy job.
Yeah, so I would work with the pastors, teams, all of that. And, you know, I had to, I was pretty young at that age, but, you know, I think every single pastor leading those locations was older than me.
Jeez.
But
what did you learn in that? Leading people that are older than you.
I had to learn, one, how to lead older people, because some of those were not healthy. Some of those we had to combine. Some of those we actually shut down, make some decisions that needed to be made. So it was a great time of I don't know, just finding myself, and I keep wanting to use the word maturing because that's what this podcast is. It's just seated in my head.
Yeah, totally.
It was a big time.
This was another area that I matured in. Me.
Mature.
I matured.
Me.
No, you're good.
But yeah, it was great. I loved that.
Is there anything that you can think of, like just even like leading someone older than you, or someone maybe even on paper more qualified than you, like? Any tips or things that you like discovered? Like,
I'm not saying I was good at it.
I think you were good at it.
No, I think no matter what, if you're passionate about what you're doing and you take the time to invest into people, and we talk about it all the time. You could talk about it in marriage. You could talk about it in leadership, pastors with team. But if you're not, putting something in the bank, then you've got nothing to withdraw from.
Yeah,
So,
good.
you know, when you're a younger leader trying to lead older people, you know, there needs to be honor, there needs to be respect, there needs to be wisdom, there needs to be discernment. There needs to be a lot of these great things, but also, just like anything, you need to invest into people.
Very good.
So therefore, when it comes to having any level of confrontation in a conversation or anything like that, you know, you've
Challenge,
got something to withdraw
correction.
from.
Yeah, you've got something that you've already put in the bank.
Yeah. But they were great days. And then it was from that, I had late 2013, December 2000 sorry. I'm blanking on the years, whenever it was.
Yeah, I think it was probably 2013.
2013. No, so it would have been December 2012.
Okay.
And then January. I had 3 trips to the States.
Yep.
I was preaching in Seattle. I was preaching in New York. And I was doing a friend's wedding in Toronto. All 3 of those trips were about 1 month apart. And all of those trips, I flew from Sydney to L.A. and then L.A. on. The first of those trips, I looked out that window over Los Angeles. City just seems like it never ends. You know what it's like. I mean, just the lights, it just never ends. And God stirred something in my heart about a church like ours in a city like this of millions, and it rocked me. I came back from that trip, talked with Lucille. We had always, at that point, we had 3 daughters, newborn baby. Bailey was a tiny baby. And we had always lived in small apartments. We'd just moved into our first house. We were so excited. We'd been there for a couple of months. And I come back and I said, Lucille, would you ever think about moving anywhere? By the way, think about how broad and vague that question is. That could have been the next street. You know what I'm saying? She's like, nope. And I was like, cool. I didn't say anything. I left it at that. But then I went back, a month later. I'm on that same trip. Now it's already in my head. It's sinking into my heart. I'm looking at that window. I'm like, why can't I shake this? The third of those trips, I actually had a layover in Los Angeles. I went up to this spot where you can kind of see over the city, and I just thought, I got to get this out. And so I grabbed a book and I started writing what would it look like to plant a church in Los Angeles, and wrote out this whole plan. I thought either I'm just getting this out of my head so I can discard it and keep going on with my life, or maybe there's something in this. But I came back from that trip, spoke to Lucille again. She's like, oh, you're serious. Well, it was after that trip, it was probably eight months later. We had sold our house, sold investment property, sold our cars, sold everything, packed up, moved myself and my 3 tiny young girls. I think Savannah was 5, Lexi was 3, Bailey was still a baby. And we moved to L.A., to plant a church in Los Angeles.
Jeez.
And yeah.
Were you scared?
Interesting question. Scared of aspects of it, but I'm not much of a fearful type person when it comes to things like that. I loved it. I was full of vision. I was full of passion, drive. And I'd written down, I didn't talk to this a great deal with it, our church, those that were involved with it, but I'd written down, I'm going to give 10 years of my life. And might live to regret this, but I wrote, I'm going to give blood, sweat, and tears to plant and build this church. And then the idea was that we would raise up local people who would run that. And then I always thought I'd move back to Australia after that. But we hit the ground running. You came out in those very early days, and
special days,
and it was amazing things that took place there. And
I came and preached at the Belasco one night, and I'm like 15 minutes into my sermon, and the Belasco Theater was next to a club.
The Mayan. Oh
my God, that was a traumatic night for me because I don't do good with distractions, and 10 minutes into my message, the walls are boom, 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 and I'm like, does anyone hear that? This club begins to bump while I'm and then Jesus, he's walking on the water. And imagine the peace. Boom, boom, boom.
I remember.
Do you remember this?
I remember because you kept going on about it.
Yeah, I'm like, oh my God. Somebody hear that? Everyone's like, we all hear it. Quit talking about
this every Sunday.
Yeah, this is what the night services are. I'm like, wow. I don't think God's here. I just quit. I just abort, That was very, very difficult. No, the Lord moved. But I remember, yes, those were really, really beautiful days. God was doing something. Maybe talk about that for a moment. Landing on the ground, this thing blows up.
Yeah.
like explodes. Like
Yeah.
this is not the northern beaches and 27 people on a golf course. This is not, youth on a Friday night with the 42 kids. This is L.A. and you've got influence, affluence. You've got thousands of people turning up. You've got demands hitting you left and right. Maybe just try to take us into your mindset, what you were feeling. I'm sure you're filled with happiness and excitement, but maybe there's other feelings too.
Yeah. It was such great and significant times. I know it's really hard because I guess we're in a season right now where it's complex to kind of think back on this past 12, 13 years,
Sure.
But man, they were good days. I felt God drop something in my spirit. Like I said earlier, my life will always be obedience to where I feel God leading me. And I knew that I was in the plan and the purpose of God, and the fruit was just incredible. The fruit was amazing. I've always had such an evangelistic side to me. I grew up where I'd be in the surf and just want to tell people about Jesus, invite people to church. So that evangelistic side, living in L.A., and it was an amazing time. We saw tens of thousands of people respond to the call of Jesus, and mighty miracles and just amazing things took place. As a leader, it was a really difficult time for me. My physical health started to decline the moment I moved to America. I'd always been fit, healthy, strong, but I don't know, it was strange. I actually got like a viral meningitis right before I moved to America. I was in hospital for like 7-8 days. They quarantined me for a little while, couldn't even see my wife or family. When I came out of that, the doctor said to me that your immune system is going to be shot from this, and that when little sicknesses and things go around, you're going to get it really easy and it's going to hit you really hard. I remember discarding that. Moved to America, it's different produce, all of that. And you want to go eat good, healthy, amazing produce, go to Australia. All those ingredients that exist here in America that are like banned in other countries, But I just started getting sick all the time. And it progressively got worse and worse. So God's doing an incredible thing. Church is exploding. We're seeing incredible fruit. Amazing things taking place. My physical health is declining rapidly. I would get strep throat every kind of couple weeks to the point where I would just start coughing blood all the time. I started getting really bad inflammation and arthritis. At its worst, times I couldn't even open my hands to hold a microphone. My feet and everything would start to swell and agony just to walk. There were times when I would wake up in the night just to go pee, and I couldn't walk. I would crawl on my hands and knees to the bathroom, and just agonizing pain. It wasn't just what was happening in California. The moment I landed in L.A., I would go once a month up to San Francisco as well, because my heart was stirred for California. And I would go up there once a month, meet with pastors, start small groups, and there was that. At that time, I was really involved with our global church as well. Hillsong was in 32 countries, I believe, multiple campuses in all of those countries. So there was just a lot of travel, all of our conferences and so on. I feel like I was always jet lagged. Started to get really bad insomnia, couldn't sleep. At its worst, 5 days at a time with no sleep. And I was still running hard. Church was growing. I had this kind of message in this heart that, like, if people keep coming, we keep filling these venues, then we've got to start a new campus. We've got to add a new service, And I lived with passion, and I was so committed to what was going on, but at the same time, my physical health was falling apart. And as that was happening, I started to lose my mental health. I remember the first time I kind of got depressed thoughts, melancholic thoughts. We didn't call it depression back then. I was a kid. I was at my friend's house. We're by the pool, beautiful day. Everything circumstantially was great. and I had this overwhelming sadness and this overwhelming kind of down feeling. And I'm always a very I like to analyze things. I like to look into things and study it. And so I remember even as a kid thinking, this doesn't make sense. I've got no reason to be down right now, but why do I feel this way? I would say that depressed kind of mentality, the way my default mind would go, I got really good at being aware of it and countering it. I wouldn't say that I knew how to overcome it. I would pray about it, but I knew how to be productive. I knew how to
work with it.
Yeah, work with it. I was always like that. And I would have my seasons, but all in all, I would still accomplish and achieve and do what I needed to do, bear fruit in the light of that. As my physical health moved when I was over here in America, I started to lose that control. I found I would spiral into these moments of depression that would last for days, and I couldn't seem to get myself out of it like I normally would be able to.
What would that look like if you were spiraling into a downward
So, some of the classical type things like, I just don't want to get out of bed. I just don't want to do this. If I'm in physical pain and everything, I grew up playing rugby league. I grew up playing football. I was tough. You take a hit in a game and it hurts and you go down for a little bit, but you grit your teeth, you get back up, you finish the game. After the game, you're like, oh, my rib's broken. My finger's backwards,
Yeah.
So I had that
kind of mentality,
tough grit drive to kind of, so as my physical health was falling apart, church is still exploding. So a lot of people wouldn't even know. I would get out and I would still preach. We're doing 5 services back to back, preaching the same message, places packed, and I would get off and I love people, so as many times as I could, I'd be out trying to meet people. But there'll be times where I would crawl up into a ball in my little room that no one could see, and I would just be in absolute pain. And then I'd hear the worship of the next service start, and I would pray, and I would grit my teeth, and I'd get back out there, and I'd lead again, and not many people would have even known how much physical pain I was in. There were people that would help me, some of those guys, Mikey Bryant, Lucille, man, they saw the worst of it, they saw kind of what I was going through. But yeah, as all of this is happening, and you ask that question, what would that look like? I would start not pushing through. I would start kind of hiding behind that. Does that make sense? I would find just that. It's really hard to describe, but almost feel like I'm in a cave or a pit, dark cloud, whatever analogy you want to use. I would just feel like those things.
But you understand all that language.
Big time.
You're going, oh, I know what that's like. I know what it feels like
yeah.
to be in a cave.
Yeah.
And so would you find yourself immobile in the sense of I can't go into the office. I can't.
Yeah, there were by the way, it's hard to talk like this, right? Because you might go, oh, this is 24/7. No, it wasn't 24/7.
Yeah.
I would have some good weeks,
Of course, yeah.
I don't think I would ever get to a good month. It was really regular, but just so much physical pain, mental turmoil, and in the midst of that, sorry, what question did you ask?
Well, I was just talking about in terms of describing the state of that at times in terms of what that actually looked like physically, because we are describing, a mental cloud, but hey, for me, this manifests that I can't talk to somebody. I'm present, but I'm totally disengaged. Are you feeling senses of shame for that? Are you aware that, I should be... I
wouldn't say I was disengaged by any means. I would try to be present in the moment.
Yeah.
But just sometimes at its worst,
Is your wife really concerned about you?
Yeah, my wife is the biggest hero ever.
Yeah.
She's amazing. Yes, she was. We had, we had Blaze when we moved to LA as well. So we got 4 kids and
yeah, right.
Church and everything's exploding, and there was so much demand. So she was incredible the whole way. But yeah, there would be times when I would get into bed on a Sunday night. Usually didn't get home from church till midnight on a Sunday night. There were some times where I was in bed and could barely get out of bed until I needed to go lead our staff meetings on a Tuesday and stuff like that, or jump on a plane. But yeah, it was a tough season. I mean, we've talked about it. I don't want to talk about it too much more, but it was a really tough season as I feel like church is doing this and within myself, I'm declining. I think the biggest, hardest part in all of it was, after a few years of this, I just kept gritting my teeth and kept going. It was actually 2016. So the church started in 2013. 2014 really is when it got going. We had our first Sunday service, May 2014. 2016 was the first time I spoke up to my dad and Gary Clark and some of those guys and said, hey, I'm not doing well. I don't know if I can lead this thing. I was happy to serve. I say this with all authenticity. I don't need to be the guy on stage. I don't need to be the leader. I don't need a title. I don't need a microphone in my hand.
Sure.
I get awkward around this stuff. I would stand on the doors and greet people, pray for people. I would clean the bathroom. Like that to me is awesome, And so I was saying, like, even as soon as 2016, like, hey, if we want to put someone else here, I'll just serve them. I'll do whatever. I just love the people and the fruit of what we're doing in the church. But
was that hard for you to say that? You're saying no, it wasn't.
No.
Okay.
No. It was. Well, maybe not as straightforward as I just said that, but no, it was fine. I love the church. Yeah. I love the bride of Christ. I love what it represents. I love the local church. And so in that, the role that I play in that, it doesn't matter to me,
Beautiful.
But yeah, it was this. That was 2016. This kept going. So 17 was even worse, but I kept going. 2018 even worse. It kept going. So 2019, man, I had nothing left, and I started getting dry spiritually. I think that's the thing that broke my heart more than anything. Physical health, whatever, I'll grit my teeth and I'll push through. Mental health, man, this is tough. It's a weird dynamic. It is what it, I'll figure it out. I'll get through it. But I started getting dry spiritually, and I think that's the thing that really hurt me. I didn't want to be standing on a platform. I didn't want to be leading anything when I didn't feel like I had what it took to give, and that was a really difficult, complicated time. But that was when I started kind of drawing a line in the sand, saying I won't do this. I ended up, I'd been on staff at Hillsong Church now 15 years and never taken like a long service leave or a sabbatical or anything like that. I was good at making the most of my little 2, 3, 4 weeks of holidays, but really taking a time to refresh and recharge. I wasn't doing it, and so I took a sabbatical. I think I was going to take 3 months, but after about a month and a half, 2 months, I almost felt bad. I'm like, I can't do this. I feel good, and so I came back far too soon. Hit the ground running. I thought I was great again, but then just crashed so hard. And so, I think, we could talk about burnout. You could talk about whatever it is,
Sure.
Whatever you want to call it, I went through it,
I love it.
Yeah. And it was when, spiritually, I felt like I was striving. I was so desperate for God. I was so desperate. I was in my Bible. I was trying so hard, and it just, really complicated thing to process. But kind of in my head and in my heart, just knowing I don't want to be leading while I feel this way, and yeah, it was a really interesting season. But yeah, it was 2019. I just crashed so hard in every way. Lucille has been so awesome. My family, my kids, and that was I don't know if you want to dwell in there or not, but that was the start of me kind of going, hey, I need to get some things sorted, Went to so many doctors, specialists, all of this over the time. No one could really give me many answers or solutions. I was almost like, just tell me the worst. Give me the worst diagnosis so at least I know what I'm working with. But I think sometimes in life, there's all these things or symptoms that people experience, and we want to know, what is that one thing? It's not. It's a combination of a lot of things. So I found out some stuff, but really that from 2019 through to today, it's just been a journey of getting my mind right, getting my heart right, getting my physical health right, and not losing sight of what I've always been passionate about, which is God, Jesus, the gospel, people.
resist the Holy Spirit.
Doesn't need something to live for. This generation needs something worth dying for.
And I think that sometimes we've misinterpreted the invitation. It is not a come and live message. The message of Jesus is a come and die message. Trying to be different, right into your image.
When you look back on those like 6 years in particular, and maybe, you know, even speaking to a guy like me, I think in many ways, we all have our own experiences, but I think we had the same job and we're doing some of the same stuff. And it's so easy, right, to get attracted or moved, or we could always do more, right? So especially when something's working. I think a lot of people go through life and they don't get to see any of the wins that you've seen. You've seen miracle after miracle. You've seen arenas full of people. I think about so many people in the ministry. It's like a lot of people just show up and it's the same 80 people. I'm not putting any of that down. I think faithfulness is what our goal should be. I like that Mother Teresa quote, God doesn't call me to be successful, he's called me to be faithful. But man, it's such a joy and a privilege when things are working and when things are flowing.
Yeah.
People do want to be there. But I'm reminded of Jesus as I get older. There's a lot of times like where, I think it's like Mark chapter 3, where Jesus is like in the wilderness by himself. He's in the secret place praying, and the disciples come. They're like, Jesus, there's a crowd of people over there, and they need you to say something. And Jesus is like, no, I'm not here for them, and just leaves. And I think at times that level of a boundary or that level of a no, when it actually gets put on my doorstep, I'm like, that is so difficult. That is so hard. Steve Jobs used to say, I pride Apple not in what we've created. I pride Apple, and I take such pride in our company about all the areas we've said no in.
Wow, yeah.
And so that always like sticks with me. It's like, I'm a people pleaser. I like to do a lot of things. I love progress. I love forward momentum. And I love it even more when there's like good indication. I could make a good case. Like, we should start another service and we should start another location. And all the things that you were doing, I don't think it was out of selfish ambition or ego. It's like, I'm trying to please God and I'm trying to show up. Is there any looking back, and maybe you're like, I don't know right now, but is there any looking back and going, I wish I would have done this or that, or I would say to others, not from some place that you're criticizing, but just going, just for you and how you are learning about yourself, or how you're speaking just about life in general as we're growing, the pace that we're moving at?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question, and I don't know whether I have the wisdom or the right advice in something like that, you know. I think there is that tension, you know, that there is fruit. Like, the gospel is doing what the gospel is supposed to do, you know. It's our job to try to figure out how to facilitate that, you know. I would say, you know, there's times I've thought back to Los Angeles and just wondering if we, I think one of the things that I found difficult is that I am leading this thing, and that there are aspects to it that I don't like. So I'm going like, how is this happening? You know, we didn't have the luxury or the ability to grow slowly and therefore grow healthily, because it exploded. So in terms of the people, we've got people coming who are wanting to volunteer, who are wanting to be involved, who are wanting to serve, who are wanting to be a part. I would love to have the luxury of 12 months to train, disciple, you know, invest and build into people and make sure the culture and the heart and the ways that we do things is there. But we didn't have that luxury. Sure. It's like, oh yeah, there's 3,000 people needing connect groups right now. Okay, you know, like that.
You're in.
That was a tough dynamic, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, with hindsight, I would be like, man, maybe just force it to be slower. Like I don't really know, but I do know that, like, you know, as church. I was talking to someone the other day. I was like, pastoring any church is tough. You know this. So many people know this. Pastoring a church is tough.
Yeah.
But pastoring a big church is really tough. There are so many dynamics. There is so many things that are going on, and it's hard to sort of navigate, you know. So there's a side to me that you know, wishes I could have grown slower, had the ability to disciple and train and build more of a team. But then the flip side is, like, this is God's church. Yeah. It's not mine. It's not Hillsong. It's like, you know, this is God's church. He planted me there, and a great, amazing group of people who gave so much, with an evangelistic heart to reach that city, to point people to Jesus, to establish a cry of worship in that city. It's a dark city, man.
Very, very dark. I think LA is one of the most unique cities. I think you're dropping all sorts of wisdom right now, and I just want to connect a couple dots for people that are listening, because you're saying some bars. I like that phrase. You're saying some statements that I don't think a lot of people think in. You said, I wish I had the luxury to go slow. Well, nobody thinks that's a luxury unless they've experienced something moving at a pace that they feel out of control in. I don't think, by the way, I think that one of your great gifts is that you accept responsibility from all fronts. You try not to judge things nor yourself too harshly, and I love that about you. So you don't want to look back and go, we should have done something differently. It's more going, it is what it is. And I actually wonder at times, and maybe I'll regret this. I don't know. I'm processing it out loud a little bit. It's like, are things ever allowed just to be for the season? Is something ever allowed to be for right now? I think we've all been trained from a leadership thing. There's no success without a successor. Yeah, I mean, but Joshua got him into the promised land. Did he not do his job right? Like, who came after that? Like, Moses didn't get into the promised land. Like, I'm just teaching on Samson right now. Samson dies in the temple, but guess what? He makes the Hall of Faith, y'all. Yeah. Weird story.
I think that's what I was actually touching on at the end there, is going, you know, maybe do I wish it looked differently or could have gone.
Or did it have a purpose?
Of it, yes,
for the
but
moment?
At the same time, man, for that 10 years, what God did in that city is incredible, you know?
And it is still going, and there's beautiful things. You were just back recently for the 10-year, I think, which I thought was really, really, that warmed my heart to see you there preaching, and I love Sam and Courtney and the team that's there. We'll move on from this, but I do want to talk about this because you were saying something, and this is an interesting thing, because you said something also that I think is an interesting bar. It's like, should I have tried to slow down the growth? And even that phrase, like, how would I do that? Can we do that? And it reminded me, years ago, I listened to a podcast kind of like this, and it was with the CEO of Patagonia. By the way, you would love that. I bet you already I like the brand a lot. The clothes are cool. Patagonia, if you're listening, we could use a sponsorship. Like, we're going to get one of these. But Patagonia was started by a guy who was a rock climber. Yeah. And really an outdoors guy, probably a lot like your framework of personality and things that you love, surf. They have a company policy there. If the surf is good, go surf, you know? So at any moment, if it's good surf, you can just leave your desk. Or? Yeah. Ben and I are looking for a creative role around there. Do you need a pastor? But there was so much in the podcast, but in particular to this, I'm going to go back and maybe I'll mess up some of the details here, but the CEO's telling their story, and he's a unique guy. He was a rock climber who started selling rugby shirts that he saw in Europe, and they started selling, and he would kind of just sell for the season. Then he was gone for half the year because he was following the surf or rock climbing. So the business model was always like, how can I work for half the year and be off for half the year? And so much of that founder is still in the corporate model of how it works today. But he talked about a time that Patagonia was all privately funded. So it was never like, you know, on the stock market, it had never taken public dollars. And they had this area where every year they had been growing at like 40% and 50%, these huge thresholds. And so when you're in that type of business where it's, you know, selling merch of some sort, you have big inventories. Well, in one year in particular, they only grew at like 20%. But that year of 20% growth, about destroyed the whole business because they had invested so much capital up front for the inventory based upon these growth markers that for the first time they didn't hit it. They still grew, but they didn't grow at these we didn't double.
Yeah.
And he had this valuable lesson. He said, oh my goodness, we have to slow the growth down and we have to re-engineer here. We want Patagonia to be a company that's around for 100 years. And if we're going to be around for 100 years, we have to grow slower.
Yeah.
And it always spoke to me around what can we be doing as leaders if we want longevity, if we want health. Can I slow this thing down? Just because I can do it doesn't mean that I should.
Yeah.
Just because it's doable does not mean that it's sustainable. I think for me, I'm in a season right now, I'm going, was that the anointing or is that just sheer adrenaline? You know, like, I don't know. At times it gets hard to decipher these things, and I'm not giving these clear-cut answers, and I'm also not trying to leave the listener today really confused. I'm being honest in the process. I think for me, it's trying to get godly counsel around me. It's looking at my schedule, my calendar, and making sure that there are moments that are forced pauses. Because left to me, I won't stop. And there's enough history to show if you don't stop, you will burn out. If you drive your car without refueling, it runs out of gas. Not me. I'll never run. Well, yeah, you will. And I could preach it better than I can live it at times. And there is something to that whole idea about, can I stop and pause the growth of something? It's an interesting thing on the Patagonia side.
It is, yeah. You know, you mentioned that story earlier of Jesus, and you know, I'm pretty sure that story, the feeding of the 5,000, right? Jesus is wanting to be alone. He's actually goes up the mountain to pray. He wants to be alone, but the crowds gather. And it says that when the crowds are there, he was moved by compassion. He was moved by compassion, and he went and he did what he did. And I think through that dynamic of our leadership, you know, there may be times we want to slow down. There may be times we want to do things a certain way, but when, you know, the harvest, when the demand is there, we have to make sort of decisions in that. And so there's no doubt that there is wisdom. There's no doubt that there is discernment. But it is a tension, you know, that you have to navigate. And that's where I think, you know, in my story, when I started feeling so dry spiritually, that was like the cutoff point for me. Because I think in how we navigate anything, good seasons, difficult seasons, whatever, we have to be in tune with the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Our faith, the foundations of our faith, our devotion to Him. You know, the analogy that you just used, like a gas, like we need to be filled up, right? If we don't have that, we start operating in our own strength, in our own, you know, that thing is destined to fail. So, you know, that ability to walk that tension, navigate through that is an interesting thing. And I think it's going to be look different for different people, you know.
I think one of the frameworks that I've tried to use, and maybe it's helpful once again for someone listening, is just this idea of like, what's my flesh and what's the spirit? Well, we actually get a great list of what the spirit looks like. It's coupled with fruit. And I like the idea that it's not fruits. But it's actually fruit. That wherever the Holy Spirit is, there's going to be a sense of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control. And I wish I could say I'm always led by that. But sometimes I'm led by anger, jealousy, envy, discontentment. That is my flesh. And I think the wisest thing we can do is try to pay attention to that. And even for you, you're saying, hey, I was good to try to fight through it physically, good to try to fight through it mentally, but when my spirit was dry, that is a moment that I have to really refigure out what my relationship with all of this looks like. And for you, you actually ended up transitioning Hillsong L.A. and some leaders that you raised up and people that have really been close to your life, you handed it over to them, and then you took on sort of a global role in Hillsong. And that was all going, and then all of a sudden the past 2 years has been crazy. People have seen all the stuff, whether that's documentaries, whether that's media. There's been a whole lot of disruption in Hillsong. Your sister was on earlier this year. We had a great time with them. For you, like, I think strength is measured not in falling down. I think strength is always measured in getting back up. Strength is measured in not quitting. The righteous man falls 7 times. We never equate righteousness and falling. but he falls. The righteous guy falls.
Yeah.
He just gets
Yeah.
back up.
Yeah.
And what I can say about your life, and I say this strongly and truly, is that I don't think you've ever actually been down. I've either seen you up or getting back up. With whatever area you're comfortable in terms of lessons you've learned or what it's even felt like, because today you're not a part of Hillsong Church, although you speak very highly of it, and I know that you love what God has done with that, but it's been a difficult season for your parents, for the church at large that you grew up, that you helped pour out blood, sweat, and tears, that you went into a dark cave because you're trying to serve it. Well, tell us a little bit about what these last couple of years have been like for you and how you've found hope and encouragement in all of it, how you've gotten back up.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a complicated season, and I keep wondering. I've been writing so much, and I don't know what I'll do with that, But
is that pretty cathartic for you though?
It is.
In therapeutic,
it is.
probably.
Yeah. Without going too much into it, as my physical health and mental, all of this stuff happened, my memory is gone. It's sad. By the way, I've had a billion concussions as well. I've lived a very active life, and so there's a whole lot of reasons for this. But I remember speaking to a psychologist and therapist who talked about when we go through traumas, our minds just this forgetfulness and everything. Wow. So this past few years has been really a season of exactly what you said, needing to find myself and climb back out. I am the type that doesn't quit. I think that's what leads to some of the races and stuff that I was doing kind of earlier this year. But, thinking through this past few years, it's tough because I don't know how to speak to things. I really don't know a lot of stuff. And my default commitment is that I'm going to have grace for anyone and everyone. I am always going to forgive and love. And I'm just going to believe that God is present in the midst of everything. So, people want to know what's been happening with Hillsong the last couple of years. They want to know this and that. I don't read the news. I don't watch the documentaries. I don't there's a whole lot of people that for whatever reason, whether it was their little 15 minutes of fame or whether it was just speaking from a place of bitterness, spoke a lot of things. There was a massive season of gossip and some straight lies, manipulations of truths that weren't kind of put out. They were just let out for the world to kind of ruminate on and whatever. So I really don't know how to speak to much of that. But if you were to ask about my journey and experience, I think it was tough. This is a church that I spent 40 years of my life in. My parents planted it when I was 1. I was on staff for 20 years. I don't think anyone will know what we gave to build the church, what we sacrificed. Oh my gosh, this was not a job. This was like a calling. This was my life, a holy calling, we gave everything that we could and in all of the transitions and the things that took place to pretty much just overnight not have a job, not have any income, just be out of that was a really difficult thing to process and navigate. A lot of people talk about pastors' kids across America, whatever. You look, Barna has its stats, all of that kind of thing. People talk a lot about pastors' kids, but there are dynamics to growing up in the family that I did and part of the church that we did that, I don't wish to get into, but there's some great sides to it, but man, there's some difficult sides to it. And, through all of that, to feel like we were so focused, so full of vision, and then just for that thing to just kind of come to an end, it's been really tough to sort of process. And in the midst of that, I'm 40 now, I'm married, I got 4 kids, I got 2 kids in high school now, and I'm trying to navigate being a husband, being a dad, being a friend, being all of these things whilst kind of going through my own turmoil and confusion and pain. And God has been so faithful. And, there's a lot of practical things that I have done to find myself and to prove to myself again. So often we need to prove to ourselves who we are and what we are capable of. And I needed to go through that. I needed to do that. but I also fought for the things that have always meant so much to me. Never missed a Sunday, went through a fire and a testing in terms of my own perceptions or views on church models. Does this mega church model work or not? I mean, I know there's 1,000 voices out there that will criticize and say why it won't, but there's 1,000 voices of like why this is good and needed, and I mean, God shows fruit in things. So like this complicated thing trying to process in my mind, but holding true to what I've always believed, even when I didn't want to. I'm like, my kids will be in church, and it was difficult because no one thinks about the grandkids. No one thinks about what they've got to experience at school and in the church and all of that. And so as I've navigated all of this, I've just fought for holding true to what I believe.
Yeah.
I love the local church. I believe in the local church. I'll give anything and everything for the local church. And it's just been an amazing journey this past few years, couple years in particular, really the last 12 to 18 months of just feeling like summiting that mountain again, feeling like back up on my feet, just doing what God's called me to do and what I've always loved. And, I don't want to hold any bitterness, and I believe I really don't. I don't want to blame, point fingers. I don't want to do any of that. I want to trust God. I want to serve His house, and I want to see people find Jesus. And it's been amazing.
It's powerful what you're saying, and obviously I think the way we began is it's complicated, and I wouldn't want anyone to be listening today to not actually just stop and consider that, because it is layered, and it's not just one conversation on a podcast and hey, everything's perfect. That you're dealing with the fallout, you're dealing with the ripple effect. It didn't just affect you or your mom or your dad. It affected lots and lots of people, and there's lots and lots of narratives. And so people get to tell their stories and believe their stories, and the life that you live will be based upon the story you tell yourself.
Yeah.
So what story are we telling ourselves? But I'm reminded, as you're even speaking right now today, of that beautiful story in the Old Testament of David, and goes out and they have this great victory, but as they come back to their camp, all of the women and children have been stolen. The Philistines, I believe, have come and plundered all of their possessions. And the men, they turn on David. They're going, you're the worst king. We should kill you. He's all alone as the leader. Like, wait, I've led you to victory after victory after victory. All of your success, all of the possessions you got are because of my leadership. And there's that little beautiful scripture that says that David encouraged himself in the Lord. And of course, I could preach it, but man, living it is another thing.
Totally.
That I got to preach to myself better than I preach to others.
Yeah.
I got to prophesy over myself better than I prophesy to others.
Yeah.
And I think for you, even Ben, like we're in our 40s, and the reason why I even started this podcast is because I was turning 40. We hear about midlife crisis, and I think I'm always trying to be proactive. Like, am I having a midlife crisis? Like, when's it hitting me? When's it hitting me? Maybe it's hitting me right now, you know? Yeah. And a midlife crisis is a little bit about no matter what, at some point in our life, we're at the middle and we're going, bro, I just gave 40 years to something and it feels like it burned me, or like, who am I?
Yeah.
Do I believe what I believe? Is this real? What am I doing? And a lot of people, as it turns out, eject. They abort. I'm leaving the marriage. These kids, God bless them, they're cute, but not cute enough to let me stay, or I'm quitting my job.
Yeah.
And I would just say sometimes it takes people from the outside speaking things to us when we're on the inside, because on the inside we've got blind spots. I got blind spots. You can see them better than I can see them. But you are living out what you believe. And I think indecision is a decision. And sometimes we live in that place where we just don't decide. And whether or not you feel undecided on the inside, your actions speak so much louder than your words. And I think what I gain from you is the life that you're living, which is, guess what Ben's doing? He's in church right now. Yeah. Like, he goes to a local church. He's led a church. He's preached on stages of thousands, and he also can just sit under the preaching and serve. And I think these things have given you your feet. And it's kind of like what Tolkien said, like, you know, one travels far little by little. And I think it's in looking back that you're like, wow, look how far we have come, and that we are still standing. And not just standing, we're thriving, because your ability to talk about these things, although it's not all the way perfect and clean yet, is just great signs of healing, that the Lord's doing something
Yeah.
in you. And I love hearing you say, yeah, I feel like the last 12 to 18 months in particular, like the light in my eyes is there, and there's some things that I want to go conquer and do and go for it. You've done some wild stuff this past year. And it's important to me because I ran my first marathon. I will not tell you my time because you will mock me and make fun of me because it's a bad time. But you did like, how long was the race that you did? You've done some like endurance races, like.
Well, yeah, to give it a little bit more context, right?
Okay.
So it'd been a tough season.
Yeah. It wasn't a bad day. It's been kind of a tough decade, not going to lie. Yeah.
Nah, it had been a tough season coming into last year. And, now I'm in my 40s, got 4 kids, teenagers. I'm living in Orange County, California, of all places.
Yep.
Got a mortgage.
Yeah, pretty cheap place.
0 income.
Ooh.
And I know how to work hard. I pursued a lot of conversations, and there's a lot of entry-level jobs, which are great. I don't want to be above those, but they're not going to sustain 4 kids and a mortgage in Orange County.
You already knew, yeah. In Orange County.
In Orange County.
Yeah, God bless it.
But, we weighed up everything. We looked at moving back to Australia. Strangely enough, we kind of worked out we can't afford to move back to Australia, which was a hard thing. I looked at moving to New Zealand. We looked at moving all different states across America.
We'd love to have you in Miami. Rich,
Thanks.
The only other place that's more expensive than Orange County is Miami. God bless it.
But we felt called, We felt called. My daughter was in 8th grade. She'd been in 7 schools. So, in my obedience to God, moving all over, like my family are just my heroes. I love them so much. But I felt this drive, like as a dad, this next I want to see my kids through one high school. And so we felt like we needed to stay.
Yep.
So that was one anchor that was there. But in all of that, I was afraid. I was really low. I was not knowing what to do, and I really spiraled into this depression that stuck with me for quite a while, and it was a pretty dark time. And I felt God. I felt this little thing, just go down to the beach. I love the ocean. I love anything outdoors. I've done so many outdoors things in my life, but went down to the beach and I took my laptop with me and I started to write down. I felt inspired to do this. Write down all the things that you've achieved and accomplished in life. So from a kid, when I could remember everything, I started talking about, thinking about some of the places I've surfed. I've surfed Pipeline. I've surfed Chopu, where they just did the Olympics. I've surfed G-Land and Cloudbreak, and I surfed all these spots. Cool, snowboarding. Oh man, I've snowboarded here. I did these tricks. I landed these flips, these spins.
He did a backflip in front of me.
Yeah,
that's true.
Snowboarding.
Yeah, I caught. Never mind. Sorry, keep going. Yeah,
but, I started writing. So weird things like that. Then I started thinking. My family, things that I've been able to accomplish and do. I started thinking ministry-wise, stages and platforms, arenas, things that we've done and been a part of. And as I'm writing, all of these things that I'd done and accomplished in my 40 years of life, I started feeling my spirit build up. I started actually speaking to myself, and I don't say this with any level of arrogance.
Yeah.
I needed this. I started going, man, you've done some pretty cool things. You're pretty awesome. Again, it sounds so stupid,
No, it
me
doesn't. It sounds amazing.
speaking
People
that.
need to hear
But
it.
I started to build my spirit back up. And then I felt to write all of the things that I sort of dream of or want to do or have said that I would do. And now here I am, 41, time's ticking, getting old. I started to write all of those things, crazy things, weird things. I want to get my pilot's license, I want to climb this mountain. I want to go do this. I want to go do that. I would love to see this many people saved. I started writing all this stuff down, and then I felt the Holy Spirit just urge me, pick one of those things, set yourself a long target, and go do it. 365 days. So many things in our world right now. People want the most by giving the least. They want it in the shortest amount of time. I mean, you just look at your social media. Everything is marketed and full of like, give you this and it'll take you nothing, But we know to build anything of significance, it takes a long time and it takes a lot of hard work and it takes a lot of perseverance and so on. So I set myself a 365-day goal and I thought, I'm just going to pick one of these things off the list. One of those things was a marathon. The reason is I've done a lot of very physical things, but, I'd been 10 plus years of so much pain. I told you, like all the issues I was having with my knees, my joints, my feet. There were times where I could barely walk. The most heartbreaking thing in that season, by the way, was having toddler kids and me not being able to even kick a ball with my kids because I was in so much physical pain. That broke me down. My gosh. So I was like, a marathon is something. When I was in my 20s, sorry, I'm bouncing back and forward, but when I was in my 20s, I had another surgery, and the doctors showed me with like the x-rays and the MRIs and stuff saying like why I would never be a runner. I weigh so much, At this point, I weighed like 260 pounds. And when I heard that, I was like, yeah, but no, I'll run a marathon one. Yeah, you might say that, but you don't know me. I'll run a marathon one day. But for 10 years, and I lived in America and all this stuff, I used to drive and I would see people just jogging. And I would be jealous. I would see them and I'd like, I wish I could just go for a jog. And I would try at times and my feet would swell up and I'd be in so much agony and pain. And so when I looked at that list, that marathon is the thing that jumped out. Set yourself a long goal. People probably only need a couple of months to train for a marathon, whatever it is, Yeah. I know it's not a crazy distance. It is crazy. It's long for some, but like other people are like, man, I do that in my sleep, So it's a weird thing, but I was like, I want to do one. So I set myself this goal, 365 days. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to work out how to do this. Now in my weird thinking, that was July. August 1st was coming. It's 2 weeks away. I thought, on August 1st, I'm going to go measure out what 26.2 miles looks like. I'm just going to see how far I can run. And so I got my daughter's bike. I used my little hunting app and I set the tracker and I went down. We live on the edge of these canyons. I went down the canyon. What I thought, by the way, would be like half a marathon and be able to run back was only like 7 miles. So I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to get creative. So I went down, I rode around this park. I basically measured out 26.2 miles. I went for a run the next day. I wanted to run 4 miles. I got 1.2 miles in and I was in so much pain. The bones in my feet and everything were locking up. So I had to walk, but I still walked and finished the 4 miles, the rest of it. The next week, I thought, this thing is August 1st. I'm going to see how far I can go with 26.2 miles. I pushed through a half marathon. So my second run was a 13 miles.
How were you able to get through with was the pain subsiding or it was increasing?
I don't know if anyone knows how much I can grit my teeth and push through pain.
Okay.
So that was that. And I walked a bunch of it, But on that August 1st that I was going to commit to this 365 days, set my alarm 2 a.m. August 1st, it's hot as well. And I found this little spot when I measured it out that I would cross over like 3 times. So I put a cooler there with some sandwiches and some water. And I set out at 2 a.m. I didn't know if I was going to run 3 miles, 5 miles, 6 miles, another half marathon. I didn't know what I would do. But I basically ran the entire 26.2 miles. And, it was slow. It was like 5.5 hours.
That's not that slow.
Stuff.
That's not that slow after my training.
But
5.5 hours?
I did it on that first day. I did the 26.2 miles with no headphones, no music, no nothing, no crowd cheering me on, no medal at the end of it. I just grit my teeth and I pushed through and I did that 26.2 miles. So after that, I was like, what do I do now? I thought maybe I pick another thing off that list or create something else and I'll set another goal. But as I thought about this, I really have a desire not to just, do stuff for myself, but how I can help others. And I know how many other pastors, leaders, business leaders, CEOs, so on, find themselves in a pit, find themselves stuck. And I was like, I want to experiment on myself and then see how I can help other people. And so I thought it's a better story to stick to this 365 days. But if my dream that I thought was impossible and had claimed was impossible for 10 years while I was in pain was a marathon, well, how far past that could I push?
Wow.
And so it was November 17th. I was on a phone talking some business ideas with a friend that lives in Park City. He runs ultra marathons. He told me that there was an ultra marathon 50 miles happening on Catalina Island on January 6th. So I'm like 60 days. I didn't tell him that I was going to do it, but I set this plan and I was like, at that point, I think I was like 242 pounds. I was like, if I'm going to run that far, and it's crazy elevation gain, something like 9,000 foot of elevation gain on that run. I was like, I need to be close to 200 pounds. I need to lose 40 pounds. Can I lose 40 pounds in 60 days? I don't know. That doesn't even sound healthy, but I just set myself these targets. I'm like, all right, well, if I could run a total of 23 miles over 3 runs and lose 6 pounds this week, then I'll set myself another target for the next week. I did it. I ran a total of 25 miles in 3 runs. I lost 6 pounds that week. And so I was like, all right, well, maybe this week I'll try run a total of 30 miles over 3 runs. And, I'm at this same time as well, trying to get jobs, working like multiple like little jobs here and there, and dad of 4 kids and all of the demands with that. But I set these targets. Well, I got 30 days into that, and I'd already lost something like 20 pounds, and I'd built my running up. And so I signed up for that run. And so on January 6th, I did this 50-mile ultra marathon. There was a 12-hour cutoff, which, it's both a long time and it's also tough to go that far. There's so much elevation gain, so many steep climbs on that Catalina Island. And my friend told me, I may be butchering this, but my friend told me the first time he did a 50-mile that it took him something like 15 hours. So that 12-hour cutoff was tough. But anyway, we did it. I got to that start line, 4 a.m., Catalina Island. I'm looking around going, what am I even doing? By the way, this was the first proper race that I'd run, and it was the first time I ran with any other people. I'd always run on my own through these canyons and just spent time with God. Never listened to headphones or anything. I love being present. I love being in the moment. I love listening to the sounds and praying and whatever. But I set out, no clue. I honestly was thinking before it, the victory in this is not even going to be whether I get to the finish line or not. It's just getting to this start line.
Very good. Preach.
Getting to that start line was awesome. But I set out, did it in like 11 hours and got my medal. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. It was tough.
Brother, you might need to be like an Ironman. You might need to give the rest of your life to be in an ultra athlete. That's insane that you're able to. People don't if you don't run and stuff like that, that's just insane that you pulled that off.
Yeah, by the way, I lost 39 pounds in that 60 days as well. So I was like 201 or something like that.
Dude,
but
lost 40 pounds in 60
after
days.
that, I was talking to a guy at church, and he was doing an Ironman, a 70.3, so a half Ironman.
Okay.
And I'm like, man, well, I'm only 6 months into this journey. Let's see. He'll let you know.
Really giving yourself.
He's like, do you ride a bike? Do you swim? I'm like, well, I surf, every now and then. I don't even really surf anymore, to be honest. I take my kids out on longboards. But I was like, I'm going to try. I honestly, part of me was curiosity, and part of it was like, I'm actually searching for a did not finish. I'm searching for that DNF to go, what is that limit?
Yeah.
And so I trained. I borrowed a bike because I couldn't afford to get one. I started swimming. I'm terrified of sharks, by the way. It's so weird, but I couldn't get access to a pool or anything, so I'd just go out to the harbor and just would swim. And on April 6th, by the way, again, the way my mind is crazy, April 6th, this guy was doing a 70.3. I said, well, if I'm going to do this, I want to try to do a full Ironman, 140 miles. Somehow we left that lunch deciding we're not going to just cancel, we're just going to try to do both in 1 month. And so April 6th was the Ironman 70.3. April 27th in Woodlands, Texas, the heat and humidity of Houston, was the full Ironman. And I did both of those, finished them, got my medals. I got an extra medal for doing 2 Ironman races in 1 month, which was awesome as well.
Who are you? Are you not entertained? What more do people want, man?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I thought you just did the long run. I didn't know you did the Ironmans.
Well, you gave me a watch. I lost the charger, so I'm not wearing it right now. But you sent me a watch.
Always a charger
I
problem.
needed it. You're like,
Guy's doing Ironman, by the way, without any type of wearable. We're now in a deep dive of dense content that people, unless they're into this, are really lost. But this is insane stuff. This is like miraculous, supernatural. There is a grace of God in your life. To not have a wearable watch, not have a Garmin. I sent him a Garmin, a girl's Garmin, very small face. But my God, they will all work. That's crazy.
You were talking to me, you're like, you're talking about all these zones, all this stuff. I was like, dude, I don't know any of that. I just wake up and I go for a run.
Bro, I didn't know that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
What has that done? Maybe these are the wrong words, but like self-esteem or like just the power of progress.
I said it earlier. I wanted to prove to myself again what I'm still capable of.
Yeah.
I wanted to prove to my kids. Oh, don't get emotional. I wanted to prove to my kids. I'm not like a big sentimental I don't have any photos before 2016 on my phone. I don't even have photos of my kids as so they don't know any of the stuff that I've done in my life really, or they'll hear some stories and they're like, wait, what? You did what? And so there was some of that, but there were all these different elements to it, but I was in a deep, dark depression with no job, no income, trying to figure out how to navigate this, still this passion and this dream inside of me and these visions to do great things for the kingdom. And here I am going, I'm 40, midlife crisis, whatever it is, with no clue what to do. And I needed to prove to myself again what I'm capable of. But it wasn't about the physical. It was about the spiritual. It was about the mental. It was about the emotional. It was reminding myself that anything is possible with God. And that if I I know what I've accomplished and done in so many areas of life. If I set my goal on something, show me where that finish line is. And it's going to be brutal. It's going to be grueling, whatever. I'll get there. I'll do it. And so it was all just this reminding myself. But again, I said it. It's not just about me. I want to help other people. I want other pastors to know that, man, you may have some dark days and you may have some tough times and you want to throw in the towel sometimes, but like what we do is worth it, There's some business people and some people that have built great companies and great stuff, but they feel stuck. They're stuck in depression. We're stuck in this grind of devices and phones and social media and everything. And it's like, hey, put the thing down for a second and just like live some life, like find yourself again, find God, find healing, and keep pushing on. Lee Domain was just with us at Oceans Church, and he said time and time again, if you don't quit, you win. I've tried to live that mentality in every aspect of my life. And so this whole thing was just this journey of what I needed to find health and wholeness again, and but also to help others. In this last year that I've been doing this, I think I'm up to 8 now, 8 people that I've talked to that I've helped run marathons. And I've got a few young guys now in the Bible college who are like wanting to get into stuff. And I was like, all right, let's go do that Ironman next year. Let's just go do it. I'll do it again. Maybe, I don't know. But that side of it is awesome as well, just helping other people. But at the end of the day, it's just about realizing that we're capable of a lot more than we often give ourselves credit for. Sadly, society, the younger generations, we make a lot of excuses and we hide behind a lot of things, our anxieties and depression and fear and whatever else. But I want to prove to myself, but also help other people to know, like, man, you can do so much more than you give yourself credit for. It's
so important that you took the time on that beach that day to list out your wins and your victories. And I think the mark of maturity, the mark of wisdom is being able to integrate my wins. Yes, I'm giving glory to God, but God used me. Yeah. And both are true. I'm not taking something from God.
No way. God,
I'm
absolutely
thanking God. And I think too often we live disintegrated and we forget things. And I just think that's such a powerful practice. Hey, I'm doubting myself, or I don't know what I'm capable of. I've forgotten. My faith suffers when I forget. And God has used you mightily, and he's worked with you, and he's invited you into his story, and you taking that time to write that down, but then also dreaming dreams. I think dreams and visions are the language of the Holy Spirit. Yeah. And there's something so beautiful that if I can imagine it, the scripture says he can exceed our expectations. Yeah. So if you can imagine it, he can exceed it. And there you go, putting down 26 miles. My man did. I'm going to have to take. I actually feel depressed after this.
Stop.
You've actually discouraged me today. No, I'm kidding. Stop. Just because I'm not going to tell you my marathon time, but that is so beautiful. And just you inviting people onto that journey. I think it's your pastor's heart, like you're pastoring wherever you go. happiness doesn't come from consuming. Happiness comes from producing and production. And I think we've taken a long time today, but like, it's not just this area of physical health and mental health in your spirit, but you are serving in a church. You're working with Oceans Church. You guys baptized 12,000 people this past year.
I know.
Baptize America is coming.
Yeah.
We're going to have to do a whole episode, I think, just on Baptize America, because that is happening. And Love Has No Limits. All the things that you're working with, I think it's really, really inspiring. As we kind of do come around to this close, it's sort of like, it's not generic to me, but it's sort of the question that we ask everyone as they come on to Mature Me, which is, as you're looking at your life right now, you are a person who's gone through so much, and you're still standing, testifying, and not just surviving it, but thriving, growing. What you just did this past year alone, very, very few people, I think 1% run a marathon. I don't know what the percentage does 2 marathons in a month. That's crazy. But what are some areas right now that you're going, I want to mature in this category? What's an area right now that you feel like you need to mature in?
Yeah, it's great. Without much thought on this, just what pops into my spirit or my mind straight away is it's been really difficult for me with all the stuff that I've gone through in my memory. It's been really hard even thinking. I sit in church, I listen, and I hear scriptures that I've preached so many times, but why are they not there? The side that I want to keep maturing in is just it's my theology. It's a really weird thing to say. It's a really humbling thing to even, I guess, admit. But stuff that I've known my entire life, stuff that I've preached, stuff that I've studied, it's gone out of my mind right now. And I've been so intentional for this last couple of years. Every morning I'm devouring my Bible, scriptures, trying to memorize things, being in environments. I love Oceans Church so much, where we're planted, Pastor Mark and Rochelle, building an amazing thing out there, about to celebrate our sixth anniversary. But, they create so many spaces to just be in the Spirit of God, the presence, corporate prayer, and things like that. So I'm immersing myself in these environments. And last night I flew in here to Miami. I get into the hotel room and just blasted worship music in the room and falling asleep to worship. I'm doing everything I can to immerse myself in that because I want it back. I want confidence again when it comes to preaching and stuff, that I can remember those things that have somehow, and it's not just scripture, by the way, that my memory's gone on. It's gone on everything.
Sure, yeah.
I talk with everyone. They're like, you remember when we did this? I was like, I don't even remember who you are, but not entirely true. But I think that's been a tough thing. But I have some big dreams. I have some big visions still. I want to accomplish some great things for the kingdom and continue to build that legacy, not for my sake, but for the glory of God. And it's weird. I don't know exactly why I'm answering this way, but as soon as you asked that question, it's what popped out to me is that I want to remember and grow in that stuff. And
I think it's a very, very helpful answer because how many times in the letters as Paul's writing, he says it this way: let me remind you of the gospel. Let me remind you of the message we preach to you. Because something tells me he's reminding us because we tend to forget it. And that's the power of being in a local church. That's the power of having a daily devotional life, because we tend to forget, not just you, but everyone. And I could join you in that and saying, I want to know God. Yeah. And sometimes I'm embarrassed about the things I've forgot about God that he already taught me. Yeah. And I want to grow saying, you already taught me this about you. Teach me something I don't know. Yeah. I don't want to be the guy who has to keep learning and relearning the lesson over and over and over again. But I'm just so grateful for you. I'm grateful for your friendship. I believe in you, thankful for you. What a life that you've lived, but the latter is going to be greater than the former. You look amazing. You look healthy. You look happy and joyful, and I'm here for it. So thank you for coming on this podcast. Thanks for taking time with me, and we just appreciate everything that you're doing. And there's someone backstage here who's...
Did we just get shot?
Someone's getting fired. No, I'm kidding. Was that the Mayan Theater? Or we at the Belasco? Ben Houston, ladies and gentlemen, the man, the myth, the legend, right here in the studio. We got to get you to come back because he's actually up to some really cool stuff that we'll find some time this next year to talk about. But I love you. You're the best. Thanks for watching Mature Me Podcast. You can always come right here under our YouTube to hear more content like this. We're going to see you again probably next Tuesday. Go ahead, like, subscribe, share, and help us out. We love you guys.